waiting on the notification. Okay, boom. And we are live. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to a very special edition of Off the Record on the People's Podcast this evening. We have an incredible guest with us, Brother Elijah Shabazz, who's going to give us some amazing information as well as inspiration. First of all, assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Yes, sir. This means a great deal to myself, my family, and the viewing audience of the People's Podcast. You haven't, we can't wait to get into so many of the questions. My sister Miriam says, assalamu alaikum. But I just want to say that every time I've seen you since I mean, man, I had to be like 10 years old, 11 years old. You've always had a kind and beautiful spirit, been kind to the junior FOI and the young people all across the country. Why have you had such a love for, mentoring, the young brothers?
Well, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let me just say that, throughout my life, Allah has guided me to do certain things, and it wasn't really a choice. And it's funny, as I studied the Arabic language, I came across this word called athar, which means to stumble across something. Like when Allah puts something in your path for you, it's not like you find it or you make it happen. Allah causes you to stumble upon it. So such was the case with the Junior FOI. At the time I started teaching Junior FOI, I was the secretary of the mosque. The great brother Shango Muhammad, who has done great work in the field of education, he was studying in college at that time to get his degree. And he was the Junior FOI instructor, but he wanted to serve the nation in a greater way, so he went back to school. So I didn't know what was going on. And, Brother Alton, Brother Alton and Brother Dawood, may Allah be pleased with him.
May Allah be pleased.
And the brothers, they were like meeting by themselves in the corner, on a Saturday. And so I was, again, I was a secretary, and the sisters allowed me to come in the building on the Saturday because we had to crunch some numbers or something. And, I was way off in the office. But I noticed the brothers were upstairs teaching themselves in the corner. And I'm like, brothers, what are y'all doing? They said, we're having Junior FOI class. I'm like, well, where's your instructor? I was like, well, Brother Shango's not here. I'm like, huh? I said, brother, come into the office. So I opened the office for them to have a class, and I was just overseeing. And I said, you know what, let me help out, because my younger brother, Raheem, he was in the class as well. And I was like, okay, well, let me, I teach my younger brother at home. So I was like, okay, let me just, teach the young brothers and fill in until Brother Shango comes back. And I've been filling in ever since. And that's how my journey with the Junior FOI began. I just stumbled upon it. It wasn't something that, I was looking to do. But, Allah put it in my heart to do.
Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. Brother Elijah, how do we pronounce that word again?
Athar, with the letter A and Tha, Athar.
Athar.
Which means to stumble upon. Yes.
Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. And I didn't know you had a younger brother in the Junior FOI at the time. I didn't know that.
You probably met him. He was around your age, He was in the class with Alton and all of them. His name is Brother Raheem. He currently lives in France with his wife.
Oh, he does the camera.
Yes.
I didn't know that's your brother. Yeah, I know Raheem.
That's my younger brother.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. Yes, sir. Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. I keep up with him on social media. I keep up with him.
Yes.
Praise be to Allah.
I'm quite sure you had to have known him.
Yes, sir. I never put two and two together. Okay. All right. So let's go back. Let's go back to the beginning, because we had another interview. This is part 2, but the part 1, the power went out on the cable. So let's go back to the beginning, just so for people who are watching now. You grew up in the Nation of Islam. What was that experience like?
Again, it was a wonderful experience. What they call the first resurrection. being in the nation. And as I said, it's like being in your own Muslim world because, we had our own schools, we had our own businesses. So it's like your life revolved around your Black Muslim Islamic world. So, my father would come on with the suit, straight tie or bow tie. My mother would have the MGT uniform on. And, and we would learn at home. And then we would go to our, to go out to eat. We would go to our Muslim restaurant to get our bean pie, or cookies. We would go to the Muslim bakery, and the Muslim supermarket was across the street. So this was like a very beautiful experience. So you went from home to the Muslim, world, called it the temple and the businesses, and then you went back to your Muslim home, which is another institution. Wonderful experience, wonderful experience. My father, he would have study group with us because it was like, 6 of us at the time in the house. So he would sit us down, open up the Muhammad Speaks newspaper, and discuss the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad with us. He would lead us in prayer in the Salat, and it's just, the home, the institution of the Muslim home is just a powerful impact on the upbringing of a child. So yes, it's very, very, very beautiful experience.
Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. And you spoke last time we spoke about once you re-accepted the teachings or like came back into the ranks.
Yes.
And you said hip hop had a lot to do with that.
Yes. So as you know, the nation, as we say, took a fall.
Yes,
and
sir.
we began to hang out with what we call the lost bounds in the street.
Yes, sir. Yes,
sir.
And
And it was a blessing. It really was a blessing because my family moved to the Bronx during the time hip hop was just formulating. So, I and my siblings, we had the opportunity to see hip hop in this, initial stage, seminal stage, if you will. And, so it was a very beautiful time, to break dancing. And we didn't call it hip hop back then. That's the thing. That's a term that came later. What people call hip hop was just basically Bronx and Brooklyn culture, youth culture. We did our breakdance and we did our popping and locking. I was a graffiti writer, you know what I'm saying? This is just something we did, you know what I'm saying? Tagging our name on the wall. That's how we got our fame or whatever in the street. And then, rapping, you know what I'm saying? This is just stuff we did. We weren't thinking like, oh, we got to complete the 4 elements of hip hop. That didn't exist. You know what I'm saying? We were just doing us, this is just who we were in the streets, and in terms of coming back to the nation, it was hip hop so much, but it was really the crack era. You see what I mean? Like the devastation that crack had on our communities, particularly in the South Bronx. The path I seen all of my peers going, it's like, in the Bronx back then, it wasn't a matter of when you were going to get into a fight, if you're going to get into a fight, it was a matter of when, I should say. And so we would always fight. I mean, that was just a part of the culture. We would thump. We would always, throw down with each other, and everything. And it was like a rites of passage. You know what I'm saying? So it's like
Yes,
everywhere I went, I was fighting. But then when the crack era came, all these guns came in, and it's like we never even seen guns before. It's like we didn't know nothing about busting your gun. And just like that was the furthest thing from my mom. I'm gonna bust your lips, open. I'm not going to bust my gun. And then it's like, the streets just turned inside out. And then like what really hurt me is like my best friend. Imagine going to your best friend's house, you're eating spaghetti. You're with his mom, and then one day she turns into a crack prostitute. It's like she's walking down the street selling herself. It's like, it's devastating. You see, what crack, did to our communities, and, turning our strong men into crackheads, and our women into cheap, prostitutes, and, and you know, so now when you got into beef, it was like a life or death situation. It wasn't like that before. You know, it's like I mean, I had so many big fights in the Bronx. Like when I say a big fight, like, you know, like with graffiti writing, for instance, if somebody cross your name out, that's like the ultimate disrespect. You know what I'm saying? Like you tag your name on the wall and somebody come and put a line across your name, it's like, oh, we're gonna fight. And one time we had a big block, you know, a big block fight. You know what I'm saying? I brought my crew. You know, we were with a crew and they had their crew and we all fought. We're still alive to talk about it. You know what I'm saying? We had big fights like this all the time. Nobody shot each other. Nobody stabbed each other. Just a straight, honorable throwdown. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But then during the crack era, it just became something totally different. Like, yo, you know, in middle school, it started, you know, dude walked up to me and just, you know, show me his gun. I'm like what is this? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you know, so when I heard the minister, you know, back in, you know, 85, we, you know, my whole family, me and my siblings, we all went to the garden, you know, Madison Square Garden, and even
Yes,
our
sir.
father
Yes, sir.
went, and we heard the minister, and that the, you know, we heard the minister was bringing the nation back, and we saw where the streets were going. It was a no-brainer. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know, it was like either death or jail or the nation. You know, I was like, okay, let me get back into the nation. You know, and that's how it was. I was only 15 going on 16, but I had enough, you know, common sense to know, like, you know, this is not going anywhere. You know.
Praise be
So,
so beautiful. And Brother Elijah, so now I know you have your brother Raheem. Are you, do you have any of your other siblings? Have ever met any of them?
you probably seen my brother Sunni. You know, he's very active
Mm-hmm.
in the nation. My sister
Mm-hmm.
Kalila,
Mm-hmm.
you know, she's a vanguard. She teaches the vanguard over here.
Mm-hmm.
Number 7, Sister Kalila Muhammad, my sister Salima, my sister Karima.
Praise
You
be so
know, they're very active at number 7. I'm sure you've seen them because y'all around the same age group.
Yes, sir. Beautiful,
You
beautiful.
just probably
Okay.
didn't know that they were my family. But yes, my family is active in the nation.
Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. Well, Brother Elijah, I had a question for you. So
Mhm.
there was a TV show about 3 years ago on Netflix. It'll come to me. With Jaden Smith and all of them about the early days of hip hop in New York and the breakdancing and all. Oh, it's gonna come to me. But all of that. Have you ever
Mhm.
seen something on television or film that can help people who weren't around understand what it was like to be in the early days of of hip hop?
You know, man, I gotta watch more television. I literally took the cable off of my bill. I mean, out of my apartment like 20 years ago. It's like I'm like really out of touch. And I heard there's a lot of great documentaries on Netflix. I might need to look it up, but you know, the only thing I can say is like you would have to go back to like Wild Style, you know what I'm saying,
And
which was one
breaking.
of
What about breaking?
yeah, breaking. Not so much, man. You know what I'm saying? That was a little commercialized right there. I don't know what that was, but
Okay,
you
okay,
know,
okay.
but Wild Style was
Well
the
said.
closest to capture like the that era of hip hop, you know, during that time. But there might be some stuff on Netflix if it's well informed by those who, you know, are from that era that might give a clearer picture. So I can't really say, you know.
Yes, sir. It's all good. Praise be to Allah. But what was
Mhm.
it like for you to take your pilgrimage to Mecca? What was that like?
Wow, brother. It was I just have to say divine. You know what I'm saying? Like it was a very, very divine experience. And what's interesting, it was like we know John Hawkins came in 1555, but I say they omit to 1619. So let's start with what they omit with, you know. So 1619 to 2019 was 400 years, you
Mm.
know, 400 years. And it was so significant to me because I went back with the tribe that I trace my heritage to, which
Mm.
is the Fulani tribe.
Mm.
And you know, so for me to go back to Mecca with my Muslim tribe who has been making Hajj forever, 400 years after they admit that they brought us over here, was of deep and divine significance, you know, for me. And the fact that it was the last Hajj. You understand what I'm saying? Like the last real Hajj, you know, because as in reality, I had intended to go in 2020, you know, because with the amount of money I make, I said, you know, it's going to take me 2 years to save up enough money to make Hajj, you know, but I was determined, you know, especially when I caught pneumonia. I don't know if you remember, you probably remember me looking like a crackhead myself. I was real skinny in 2018 and lost a whole lot of weight. And, you know, and I was in denial, you know, but I had caught pneumonia in 2018. So after Allah brought me back from that, and, you know, I said to myself, I have to make Hajj. You know, I have to make Hajj because I had traveled to Africa. I had traveled to Morocco. I had traveled to Europe. I had done all these things. I said, if I had died and returned to Allah, and I had traveled to all these places and I didn't go to where he tells us to go, which is Mecca, Hajj, then I'm like, I would have felt like I shirked my duty. So I said, I'm determined to go in 2020, right? But as Allah would have it, because Allah knew there would be no Hajj in 2020, I got all this overtime opportunity out of nowhere, brother. Out of nowhere. You know, I went to work one day and they said, can you work overtime this week and indefinitely? I'm like, huh? They were like, indefinitely. I'm like, indefinitely? He's like, yes, we need you to fill in. I was like, okay. And before you know it, brother, within, you know, less than a year, I had enough money to go to Hajj. You know, so that was so everything Allah guided, you know, and this is what I'm saying from the beginning. It was like Allah made it easy for me to go. Then I went with my tribe, and we had a layover in Egypt, and then we went over to Mecca. To Medina, which is the holy city of Medina. Now, I'm gonna tell you something, brother. You know, when people would tell me, let me first go back to when I went to Africa. When people would tell me of their experiences, like, you know, they said they felt their spirit of their ancestors, or they seen their ancestors. And honestly, you know, growing up in the Bronx and everything, I'd be like, man, you know, you're just being emotional. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, you're imagining stuff, you know. I wouldn't say that, but in my mind, I'll be thinking that until I went to Africa and I had my experience. You know, it's like I felt the spirit of my ancestors there. And brother, when I went to Medina, the city of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and you know, there's this thing that they do, you know, where they salute the Prophet. You know, when they go past his tomb, they salute him. They say, Assalamu alaikum ya Nabi. It's like, you know, they say it like that. They like sing it, Assalamu alaikum ya Nabi. You know, so I'm like, it can't hurt to say it's, you know, and I said it with all sincerity, and I greeted the Prophet, and wallahi, I mean, as we say in the nation, word is born to Allah.
Yes, sir.
You know, it's like I felt the spirit of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and it's like I started crying profusely. You know, it's like this uncontrollable tears. You know, and I'm like, wow, you know, it was like it was for real. You know, I was like, oh, this is real. You know, it's like, you know, speak not of those who die or are slain in the way of Allah as dead. They are not dead. That's right. They are alive, but you perceive not.
Yes, sir.
It is just an experience you would, you know, I can only say it's an experience you would have to understand it. You know, it's like you feel this presence. It's you know, it's unreal. It's just a divine thing. And it happened more than once. You know, I said, I thought it was a one-time thing. Then I went through again, and it happened again, you know, 2 or maybe 3 times. I was like, oh, wow. Very, very real thing. And that's just Medina. Yes, sir. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. Okay. Yes, sir. I just want to stop you on that. First of all, my sister Naima sends her greetings, and thank everyone who likes, shares, and subscribes to people's podcast, showing you love, brother Elijah.
Yes,
what did you say? What does that mean? What you said?
It's like the thing you say in the sitting position when you make salat. It's a peace be unto you, O messenger, and the mercy of Allah. Okay. You know, it's like peace be unto you, O prophet. You know what I'm saying? Assalamu alaikum, yeah. Oh, yeah, it's like, oh, you know,
yes, sir.
Nabi, prophet, you know. So it's like, it's like you just say it with sincerity and wow, it's like it's very, very real, very divine. Yes, yes, and that was before I even went to Mecca. We stayed in Medina for like 5 days, which is the holy city of Medina. Prophet, yes. So and then after that, you make your niyyah, and then you go for the Hajj. Now, Hajj is very different than Umrah. Umrah you could complete in like a couple of hours. That's the minor pilgrimage.
Okay.
Hajj is more intensive. It's like it's over a period of like 5 days. And so it's like once you make your intent, you go into a state of ihram. You wear the white garb, and you wear that white garb for days. And when you're in that state of ihram, you can't argue, you can't fight, and that's why I said 2019 was the last real Hajj, because right now they do this 6 feet apart Hajj. You see what I mean? But the real Hajj, people are supposed to bump into you. People are supposed to annoy you, because that's a part of the test of the Hajj. You see what I mean? Where people are knocking into you and you can't get mad. Yes.
Okay. What's that called when they do that?
I don't know what the Arabic word is for that, but it's getting on your nerves. That's what it's called.
And these are random people, or these are people who from
random because it's so crowded when you're walking around the Kaaba. You understand what I'm saying? If you look at a picture during a real Hajj, it is so tight.
Yes, sir.
You see? And like a lot of people don't even get to touch the Kaaba. I was blessed to touch the Kaaba twice. The first time, I almost died. Like I almost, was crushed to death at the Kaaba. This is the truth. And so because I made it all the way to the front, and there was a group of people trying to, standing in line to kiss the black stone. And man, that was an experience, man. But without going too deep into the details, but they had me chained in, because they were holding each other's shoulder, like in ranks, trying to get to the Kaaba, and I was pushed against the wall. And I had to call on Allah. I was like, Allah, get me out of here. Get me out. And I felt myself like going. But, I got through. And when I got through, it was a very, very deep experience, because my top, it was in order to get through that thick crowd, my top came off, because you only have like a white towel covering your top and a white towel covering your bottom. Good thing my bottom didn't come off, but my top came off. And then I was trying to keep my shoes, and I had to let it go. You see what I mean? And so I came walking out of there like a shirtless prophet. But the experience was so deep. It's like my face was so lit up. They call it the anur, the light.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And people were like literally staring at me, and I thought they were staring at me because I had lost my shirt, but they were staring at my face. And so when I couldn't understand it, and so this one brother, he had a prayer rug. I was like, please, can I have your prayer rug? So I could cover myself. And I was walking around with a prayer rug and or as a top. And but to make a long story short, when I finally reached the hotel room, I saw what they saw, which was this bright light over my face, and I was like, wow, Brother Elijah, you are glowing. It was like a light like I've never seen before, coming over my face. And it's like I said, it's a divine experience. It's a very, very, very magnificent spiritual experience. Even sleeping, like, part of the Hajj, you sleep at the Mash al-Haram, which is outside, and it's a rocky ground, You know, it's a rocky ground, and you have this little like cushion between
Okay,
you
okay.
and the rocky ground. And you know, with the Hajj, you have to sleep right next to somebody, you know, which is very uncomfortable. I'm not used to sleeping that close to men,
Mm.
you know what I'm saying? So it's like you brothers right here, brother on your right, brother on your left, and you got to sleep right in the middle. And so, you know, I try to move my cushion over, you know, and the brother was like, "What are you doing? You can't do that. You got to sleep. You got to sleep right here, you know." And so I'm like, okay, I'm like, man, how am I going to sleep on this rocky ground? You know, this is a place mentioned in Quran. The Quran is called the Mash al-Haram, which is the holy ground.
Yes, sir.
And
Yes, sir.
so when I lay down on that ground, I'm like, I'm gonna be up all night because there's no way I could sleep on these rocks, brother. I slept like a baby. I
Mm,
slept.
mm,
It was like I slept so comfortably. Before you know it, I was up and it was time for Fajr. You
mm,
know,
mm.
I couldn't believe I slept that comfortable on a rocky ground. You know, so yeah, Hajj is like it's very magnificent. And you know, and what was also deep, I experienced a flash flood in Mecca during the last day of Hajj. I
Mm,
actually have a
mm.
video of that. You know, and we would just come in. It's like Allah was trying us every step of the way. It's like you know, we went to go slaughter the animals, and the machine wasn't ready. You know, because you know it's like something went wrong, so we had to go back to Mina, come back again, and then go back to Mina, then come back. It took us 3 days to slaughter our animals. So usually only take one day. Yes, sir.
Okay, yes, sir. I mean, you give me a lot of information. Everybody in
I'm
the comments
sorry.
showing you love. Yes, sir. Okay,
Mhm.
what does it smell like? What's the smell like over there?
So what does it smell like over
Yeah,
there?
like when you saying it's all these people fighting, but like, is it like moderners or like slavery? Like what is it like? Is it new? Like what does it smell like?
I mean, you gotta wash up. You know, you gotta be
So
clean.
so it smells good. So it's not like a
It smells
dirty.
good, yes.
Okay, okay,
And
okay. I just
and
want to be clear.
the
Okay,
masjid al haram smells very good. The
okay, yes,
scent
sir.
is very beautiful. I mean, very nice inside there. You know, because the you know the Kaaba is right in the Masjid Al Haram. You know what I'm saying? It's right in the center. And let me just go back. I mean, you know, when we first left from Medina and we got to Mecca, right? And you know, we were with the Sheikh, and the Sheikh was like, you know, everybody, West Africans, they wait on the Sheikh to guide them. You
Okay.
know, I was so anxious to get to the Kaaba, brother. I said, I can't wait. I'm like, he was like, we're gonna wait on the Sheikh, brother. I'm like, you're gonna wait on the Sheikh. I am out of here. I'm in Mecca. You understand what I'm saying? It's like I've been waiting for this moment my whole life. I can't wait. You know, so I left. I left my party. I took pictures on the way to make sure I didn't get lost because I was a mile away from the Kaaba. But that's a short walk for me. Anybody
Mm.
know Brother Elijah? Brother Elijah walks. I walked 13 miles, 14 miles. I was like, 1 mile? I was like, that's it? I was like, I'm out. And we arrived in Mecca like 3 a.m., 4 a.m. I got to the Kaaba in time for Fajr prayer. That
Mm.
was just
Mm.
another mind-blowing experience because, you know, just picture like your whole life, you know, oh man, I don't have it on this prayer book. But you know, you see the Kaaba, you understand what I'm saying? Like, you know, on your
Yes,
prayer
sir.
rug and all these places, and you know, you're facing towards the Kaaba your whole life. Imagine making your salat right in front of the Kaaba,
Mm.
you know,
Mm.
like
Mm.
right there. I'm like, I'm right here praying, the Kaaba's right there. It's like, you know, I'm literally facing the Kaaba. I'm looking at the Kaaba, you know, when I come up from my rak'ah. Wow, that was like, you know, it was just a magnificent experience, you know, to kick off my Hajj, you know, and make salat at the Kaaba for Fajr, you know. Um, yeah, it's just, yes. I mean, I could go on and on, but there's just so many divine and beautiful experiences that I had during the Hajj, you know, during the
Praise God.
Hajj. He was like, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Elijah. Okay, so I want to talk about sleeping on the holy ground. I mean the ground,
Yes,
the holy land. Now you're
yes.
sleeping. Is there security? Are you worried about getting robbed? You got your cell phone? Like, what is it like? What is it like?
Well, you're just in your Ihram garb. carry. I mean, you could carry something, but I wasn't carrying nothing.
No cell
I
phone
think
or
I think I
nothing.
had my phone, but
Okay.
I wasn't worrying about that. This is this is Hajj. You know what I'm saying? The only thing I'm worried about is completing my obligation. It's like and doing it as perfect as possible.
Yes, sir.
Because with the Hajj, any violation, like if you get into an argument or if you do something wrong, you got to slaughter an animal as a penitence. You see
Yes,
what
sir.
I mean? For every violation, of the Hajj. So I mean, but I wasn't trying to have to slaughter any extra animal. I just was trying to do everything right. So if somebody stole from me, man, let that sin be on them. I wasn't even worried about that. I'm not worried about any personal belongings at that point. I'm just worried about completing my obligation to my Lord. And it was a wonderful experience. Now, my greatest fear, to be honest with you, was getting crushed to death. That was like my greatest fear,
Yeah.
because I read about people, particularly on the day of the stoning. One year I think a few like 2,000 people got crushed to death. During the day of the stoning. So that was like my main concern. Like before you come out of the state of Ihram towards the end of the Hajj, after you slaughter the animals and everything, you go to the I forget what the place is called, where you stone the shaitan, you stone the devils.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And it's usually a crowded bottleneck. But praise be to Allah, by the time I went, they had built 3 different levels. So you had plenty of room to do, complete that obligation without, there being a crush, and so the means of egress was stretched out over miles. So we were able to complete that obligation. I was so happy because, like I said, that was my greatest fear, getting crushed. And like I said, I almost did get crushed, but it wasn't during the stoning. It was at the Kaaba itself. But alhamdulillah, I made it through there, and it's such a peace came over me. Like when it was all over, it was like such a bliss.
Yes, sir.
When I completed the Hajj ritual.
Okay. Yes, sir. Praise be to Allah. Okay, so Brother Elijah, I had a question for you. Man, you give me so much. Okay, so when you say slaughter an animal, do you get to pick which animal, or what animal is it? And how do you like? Is it just you
Well,
say?
yeah, I mean,
You say Allah Akbar, like what's it like?
you get to pick your animal. It's like when you go as a group, because to do Hajj, you have to go as a group. So it was 113 of us, which is another significant thing. Like wherever 2 or more you gathered, Allah is the other. So there
Allah
was
Akbar.
113. So Allah was the 114th.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And it was exactly 113 of us. So we had to purchase 113 animals. So it was mostly sheep. It was mostly sheep, and I don't think we did any goat. Yeah, it was just mostly practically all sheep. So we slaughtered 60 the first day, and the machine broke down, and then we had to go back and slaughter the other 53 the next day. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a machete, or what's going on? Like when you say slaughter, like how does that work?
There are some that gets yes. So some go through a machine, but most times there's a brother there, with the knife, and that slaughters them as they go through. So you don't do the slaughtering yourself.
Okay, that's what
but you witness the slaughter.
Mm.
You witness the slaughter. But some people do. You can slaughter the animal yourself if you want, or you could pay somebody to slaughter for you. You do have the option to slaughter your own animals, but we paid somebody to slaughter our animals. Yes. And,
okay, yes, sir.
I was one of the witnesses to the slaughter.
Yes, sir. And were there any sisters or women that went with you?
Yes, a part of the delegation there were men and women. Yes, men and women.
And how did y'all do that with trying to get women to the front? How did that work?
Around the Kaaba,
Yes, sir.
or yeah. So you go as a group. So usually like the brothers are in the front, and they protect the sisters. Uh, just keep the sisters surrounded. Because it's a very 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 thick crowd. You know, so that's how you stay separate. Within the crowd is like the groups, and so everybody knows to respect that space. When you're walking around the Kaaba, and but for the first 3 rounds around the Kaaba, you actually run. You're supposed to run as fast as you can, as much as you can for the first 3, because that's the tradition. And then after that, the other 4 you walk. So I was doing my little sprint around the Kaaba, for the first three times going around. And it's the same with the Safwa and Marwa. There's a point where you run. When you get to a certain point, you are required to run, and then after that you walk. And if you can't run, you just speed walk. At that particular point, and then you do the walk, and then when you get to that point again, you run. So it's a that's why they say you have to be in shape to make Hajj. You know what I'm saying? It's like you have to be in good physical condition to complete the Hajj al-Akbar. You know what I'm saying? Because there's the minor Hajj called Umrah, but the Hajj al-Akbar is very involved, and you definitely have to be in shape to do it. Yes. Yeah, there's some people there was a elder among us. We had to do one of the brothers had to do the circumvention for him. Like if you're not able to complete it, somebody can do it for you. Like for instance, I actually made Umrah for my parents while I was there. Like after I completed my Hajj, Umrah, like I said, only takes like an hour or so, which means you make the intention outside of the Kaaba, you go into the Kaaba area, you make the 7 circuits around the Kaaba, you pray at the Station of Abraham, you run between the Safwa and Marwa, and then you cut a little bit of your hair off, and then you take off the white garb. So you could do that for somebody. So I did one Umrah for my mom and one Umrah for my dad. So yeah, that's what happens. It's like but even if you're there and you're physically not able to complete it, somebody could do the ritual for you on your behalf.
Yes, sir. My sister Miriam says, thank you so much for sharing your Hajj experience with us. Yes, sir. Someone said this sounds like a Squid Games or like a Stephen King novel. Was it scary or was it not scary? Besides, once you made it past that, was it still scary?
Once I finished the Hajj, like I said, I was in a state of bliss. I was happy. But yeah, there was a fear. Allah said He would try you with something of fear, and I definitely had the fear of being crushed. That was like my fear even before I got on the plane. Because like I said, I read stories of pilgrims getting crushed during the Hajj, and if you die in Mecca, you go to al-Baqi, and al-Baqi is not it's a holy burial ground, but it's not the most glorious burial ground. Because everybody likes to get buried with a little tombstone and all that. That don't happen at al-Baqi. They just dig up some earth, put your body next to somebody else, cover it with some rocks, and that's it. And it's like, okay, where's Brother Elijah? He's over there somewhere. You will not know where I am. It's just one open, burial ground called al-Baqi. So whoever dies in Mecca during the Hajj, they bury them in that burial ground, which is honorable. But like I said, it's not the most glorious burial ground. Yes.
Praise be. Yes, sir. Okay, well, Brother Elijah, we have a quick 60-second commercial break for all of the sponsors of the People's Podcast. And we're coming right back to you, sir, because you've given us some amazing information as well as inspiration. Brother Elijah, are you on social media where people can reach out to you if they want to have any further information about how to plan a pilgrimage, like how to plan Hajj? Like, can they reach out to you?
Yes, I'm Elijah Shabazz Facebook.com/Elijah Shabazz Bah, B-A-H. Elijah Shabazz Bah.
Yes, sir. And what does the Ba mean? So, can you clear it for us?
Ba is a Fulani, the name they gave me when I went to my ancestral homeland in Guinea. It's one of the 4 royal names of the Fulani. You have Ba, which means bow, which is also said as Balde. Some of us pronounce it Baldy, but it's really pronounced Balde, B-A-L-D-E. And it's a name that goes back to ancient Egypt. Ba is the spirit bird, which is interesting. All my names have something to do with a bird. Even Shabazz in Persia, Shabazz is a the symbol is a bird.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Shabazz, and so is Ba. So yes, that's where the name comes from. It comes from the Fulani. In the long version, Balde means long life. Long life. Yes.
Beautiful. Yes, sir. We'll give a quick 60-second commercial break for all of the sponsors of the People's Podcast. If you all, thank everyone who continues to like, share, subscribe to the People's Podcast. If you like to make a sponsor or donation, please cash out the People's Podcast. It's greatly appreciated. Hold on one second. Here we go, brother Elijah. Thank everyone who continues. And so much. Thank everybody for showing love in the comments. Can't wait to put this on YouTube. My brother Rashad, Street Premier Media Production. He has a 4K camera and a drone. He does television and film editing. Please reach out to him if you need any of that. My sister Miriam, ABC, I Love Me, and children's book and coloring book, both of which are available on Amazon. My sister Naima, Stay On Point Dance Academy, LLC. She teaches ballet virtually to young girls all across the country and right here in the studio in Atlanta, Georgia. Also, Rock Communications. If you're working on a book and you need copy editing, project management, content development, or media relations, please reach out to Rock Communications if you're working on a book. Student Minister Robert L. Muhammad, conflict mediation, squashing the beef throughout the Southwest region. He does a phenomenal job. Thank you very much. His wife, Sister Fudia Muhammad, Children of the Most High, Giving Birth to a God and the Science of Child Rearing. Make sure we get that book as well. Also, Sister Sherry Muhammad, AsiaticMinds.com. It is a virtual school that teaches STEM to young kings and queens all across the country, AsiaticMinds.com. Fashion Gods, Urban Streetwear out of St. Louis, Missouri, 314-329-6009. He can ship those clothes to you anywhere you need. Brother Kenneth, bow tie maker extraordinaire. He'll ship bow ties to you anywhere across the country. Also, Power Campus Online Learning. Do you want to improve your homeschooling experience? We're here to help. 770-847-0786. Thank you very much. Dr. Henry M. Carter, King Henry's Turkey Legs, right here in Atlanta, Georgia. Brother Rashad Muhammad, COVID-19 Disinfecting Cleaning Services out of Chicago. My father's book, The Soldier in the Movement of Christ, AbdulSharif.com. And last but not least, my 2 books, Cleopatra, which is a children's book, and No Father, No Excuse. Right back to our brother Elijah Shabazz. And boom, and thank you everyone who's in the comments showing love. Boom, and Sister Joy says ASA. Boom. And okay, my sister Miriam had a question for you. Alaikum salam, Sister Joy. My sister Miriam had a question about the white garb. You said you took it off. Once you at the end, is that like how does that work? Like you just?
Well, you have to shave your hair first. That's why you see everybody that make Hajj, they have a bald head. Because before you could take the white garb off, and that's in the Quran by the way, the shaving of the heads. And then once you shave, then you are able to take off the garb, and that means you have completed the Hajj or Umrah ritual. So you stay in it until. However, even though during the Hajj, right? The Quran talks about how you can stay. It doesn't mention Mina, but the place is called Mina, which is the tent city. Where you stay in a tent.
Yes, sir.
And you could leave after 2 days. But there's no blame on you if you stay for the 3rd day. Now, as I said, we were tried because we couldn't slaughter our animal the 1st day. I was hoping to slaughter the animal in 2 days so I could get out of Mina on the second day,
Yes, sir. Yes,
But
sir.
because we did not slaughter the animals on the second day, I had to go back to Mina for one more night. So I wound up doing all 3 days in Mina. So towards the end of the Hajj, you could either do 2 days in Mina or 3 days. Now, even though I came out of my white garb, I still have to complete the obligation of going back to Mina until the animals are slaughtered. So I was in my regular clothes, with a bald head, but I still had to go back there, and I still, you still have to complete the 7. Like when you finish the Hajj ritual, you to close it out, you make 7 circuits around the Kaaba.
Beautiful.
Also, before you leave Mecca, it is mandated, that you make another 7 circuits around the Kaaba. It's called the farewell circuits. And if you don't make those 7 circuits, you have to slaughter an animal as a penitence for not completing that obligation. So there's 7 circuits you make at the end of the Hajj. You run between the Safa and Marwa, you do that, and then there's another 7 circuits you make before you leave the holy city of Mecca. Even if you're going to Jeddah, which is like we went to Jeddah to the airport. So I had to make my 7 circuits around the Kaaba before we left to the city of Jeddah to go to the airport to fly back. Yeah.
Yes, sir. And where
Uh-oh.
can you hear me, Brother Elijah?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yes, sir. I said, where are they getting all these animals from?
Oh man, a lot of them come from, believe it or not, Somalia.
Mm.
Somalia produces a whole lot of the animals for the Hajj ritual. Yes, they're
Okay.
not all produced in Mecca. They're produced in East Africa.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Somalia.
Yes. And Brother Elijah, do you teach Arabic?
Yes, I do. I teach Arabic at the NOI in New York City online.
That's amazing. Okay, yes, sir. And people can, if they want to reach out and learn about why he is Nate Thalatha, all of the numbers in the alphabet, they can reach out. They can reach out to you.
Yes, sir. I have to start some online classes, but right now I just I basically teach the students at the NOI. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay, can you give us one a quick story about Minister Hafeez?
Oh wow! I mean, I have so many, but Brother Hafeez has been like my big brother. Before he was a minister, he was just like he was my big brother. We know him as Brother Kevin. You know what I'm saying? And as a teenager, becoming active in the Nation of Islam, he was just there, and he was the assistant at that time to Abdullah Muhammad. May Allah be pleased with him as well. The great Elijah Shabazz.
Yes,
I was blessed to sit under his ministry in New York City. I mean, he dropped so many powerful jewels on us, and brother, Kevin at that time, Brother Hafeez, would open up for him, and I remember like when the minister went. It was my first time, like, when I came in the nation, I began traveling. I'd never been on a plane before in my life. Well, I can't say that. My family moved to Florida briefly, and I, on the way back to New York, I was on a plane, but I was still in my mother's womb at the time. But I think that was the first time on a plane. But I'm talking about, outside of the womb, I was on a plane. Here's when I came into the nation, and we did a lot of traveling back then in the 80s. So we went to Detroit for Politics Without Economics, a Symbol Without Substance. That was the tour that the minister was on at the time. And you know, so we all, you know, Brother Hafeez, myself, and a few other brothers, we stayed in the same hotel. You know, we went to secure the minister, and you know, we just hung out there in downtown Detroit. That festival was going on. I forget the name of it, but it's, and the minister spoke at the very same place where we have Savior's Day, the Cobo Ballroom, it was called at the time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This is back in '87. You know what I'm saying?
Mm,
16 years old, hanging out with Brother Hafeez, you know, in
mm.
Detroit. You know, my first time going to Detroit was with, you know, Brother Hafeez, my big brother. And, you know, we'll just be in the hotel cracking atoms, you know what I'm saying, bean soup science, you know,
Yes, sir. Yes,
breaking down the lessons, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, Brother Hafeez was good for that, man, you know, and it's like, you know, we just be having our you know, debates and whatnot. And so yeah, you know, so it was like a very, very, you know, like a lot of us, man, that came up in the era had a very personal relationship with Brother Hafeez, way, you know, long before he became a minister, you know. So by the time he took on that position, it was like, okay, our brother is in the post. You understand what I'm saying? It's like, you know, our big brother is there in the post. So like I said, I could share whole lot of experiences going from the 80s up into the late 2000s until the time he passed away. But my last experience I would share is the counsel that he gave me. You know, Brother Hafeez just had a way of calming you. You know, it's like, you know, when you go through your trials in the nation and you know people disrespect you and you know get at you in a way where you want to, you know, argue and fight with people, and you know, and so I would always, like, every time I felt myself like flying off the handle at somebody, you know, getting ready to fly off the handle at somebody, I would always call Hafeez. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, and he would just give me that counsel. You understand what I'm saying? Like, you know, and just calm me down. Like his voice just had a way of calming you down, you know. And as I mentioned earlier, when I was at the hospital with pneumonia, Brother Hafeez was on the phone with me like every day, you know, checking on me and
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know, just giving me good counsel and just keeping my spirit up. You know, and that's just who he was, you know. And as I said, he was, when you hear about Hafeez, it's you know, like with most ministers, they talk about, you know, their quotes and what they said, but 99% of what you hear about Hafeez coming out of New York from the believers is what he did. You know, what he did, who he was, you know, to us. You know what I'm saying? He did the janazas of practically all of our relatives. He did my mother's janaza, my brother's janaza. You understand? Like, you know, he performed so many marriages. You know, he was just a, you know, a uncle and a big brother to all the believers' children. May Allah be pleased, man. It's you know, it's we definitely miss him, but at the same time, it's like we always feel his spirit. You know, when we walk through the doors of Mosque number 7, it's like, you know, him being upstairs in that office. You know, it's like he's still with us. You know, and may Allah forever shine the light of his legacy into the future.
Praise be to Allah. My sister said, praise be to Allah as well. Thank you. Okay, I got 2 more questions for you, Elijah, and we get to go. What you spoke about hip hop in the early days and graffiti and breakdancing and the elements and all of that. If you could, what's your favorite album of all time?
Wow, I don't think I can answer that question, right? You know, it's like because there's just so many like classic albums from that era. The most impactful, I would say, was Rakim. You know, when he first came out, because like when I tell you when he first came out, man, it was mind blowing. It was mind blowing, and we were all rapping back then, but we have never heard nothing like that before in our life. Like the way he put words together was just incredible. It was out of this world. You know, it's like this one brother described it. He said he was driving down the street, and when he heard Rakim rapping, he had to pull over like, what is this? You know what I'm saying? It was
and
like,
this is paid in full.
Yes.
Okay.
And it was like, but just before the album, it was like, yeah. So Paid in Full is like a classic album. Like that's one of my best albums. Yeah, um, uh, Eric B for President. Oh man, Say ain't no playing ball or bopping in the hall, just writing my name in graffiti on the wall. And it's like it's like we like it just struck a chord with us because this was our life. You understand what I'm saying? Like,
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
In the way the way he put those words together. So I would have to say, that's just one of my all-time, favorite albums ever. Paid in Full. And what he said, especially being Muslim, when he said, "I'm letting knowledge be born into perfection. All praise is due to Allah, and that's a blessing." Like that was the first time you heard the name Allah in hip hop. You know what I'm saying? That was revolutionary. That was new. Like after that, everybody was saying Allah, but that was like the first time, and it was like, boom. You know what I'm saying? I was like, whoa. It's like everybody was like, whoa. Allah. Who's that? You understand what I'm saying? Everybody was like, God, I thank God this and I thank God that. He said, all praise is due to Allah, and that's a blessing. So yeah, he shook the whole hip hop world up with that album. And yeah, every rapper after that been patterning himself after Rakim. Yeah, so Paid in Full, definitely.
Paid in Full, yes sir, yes sir. And Sister Linda says, "Assalamu alaikum, family. Walaikum salam, ma'am. And thank everybody who continues to like, share, subscribe to People's Podcast." Brother Elijah, what would you like your legacy to be, sir?
Wow. I don't know. It's like there's so many aspects of my life, but teacher, it's like teaching is one of my, has become, out of all the things I've done in this life, teaching has been my main thing. Teaching is something I love to do. It's like you don't even have to pay me to teach. I don't get paid to teach. You know what I'm saying? I teach because I love to teach. It's like it's just something that I had to have been born to do, because I just do it effortlessly, and some people watch me when it could be a room full of noisy junior FOI, and I'll just be at peace, calm, and just call the room to order. And they're like, how do you do that? Because a lot of people, they go crazy with children are making noise and going around, and it's like it's music to my ears, and it's like and just bringing them into order is just a natural thing for me. So I out of all the things I've done in this life, I believe that will be my greatest legacy, because that's something that Allah gave me. Yes.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you very much on behalf of myself, my family, and the viewing audience of the People's Podcast for your sacrifice and the sacrifice of your family, Brother Elijah. Once again, my Junior FY memories are always filled with you being kind to us, from the Junior FY conventions to them camps. Every time I saw you, you were always kind to me, Brother Elijah. That meant a lot to me and means a lot to me, sir. Thank you, man. Allah continue to bless you. And backstage, now, when I was dealing with the FOI, seeing you take the New York Junior FOI and have the whole new group. So it's like, doing this thing. Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. This is Joshua Leonard Muhammad signing off for the People's Podcast. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum salam.
Thank you, sir.